Welcome everyone. This is another episode of Daily Dev Roasting DevRel, and this is a series that started, I think, almost 1 year ago. We are close to celebrate the first year, and basically we are getting many speakers and developer advocates from all over the world. We just get the very best ones, and today we have two dear friends, and I think this episode will be very interesting because there will be some spicy takes. There will be some like questions that might be useful, for example, if you want to get started with DevRel. But first of all, without further ado, I would like to let our two guests to introduce themselves. I'm super pumped because I haven't done here a live event on Daily Dev for about 1 month. So usually after a while, I started to start kicking because I really want to make another one. Let's start with Beka. Beka, welcome. You have a great setup. I love it. And how are you? How's it going?
Hey, thanks so much for having me. It's going really well.
Perfect. Please introduce yourself so then we can get started. Let's warm up. And by the way, hi, everyone.
Yeah, sure. So I have been in tech. I'm a career changer. So I taught college English for 10 years before coming over into tech about 5.5 years ago. I started as a front-end developer. I moved into community building. I have a community called Virtual Coffee, and I've been in the DevRel space probably for about the last 3.5 years or so, but community building has always been a part of my life since I was little, so I feel like it's always been there in some form. Oh, and I'm a senior developer advocate at Continue.
Perfect. And also, of course, we put the link below. Thank you so much. I would also like to welcome my friend Abdel. We went for a run together under the rain in Berlin, so now we are automatically best friends. I would like to thank him because he joined here, even if he's technically on vacation, but DevRel is never on vacation. And I also would like to wish him happy birthday because he actually turned 40. I don't know if you can say it, but
Yes.
Welcome. And how are you? How's it going?
Thank you so much. I'm good. Yeah, I'm in beautiful sunny Morocco for my birthday. So
Right, perfect.
So, yeah,
So really appreciate it. Yeah, go.
yeah, Abdel, I'm a developer advocate at Google Cloud. I've been at Google for the last 12 years, changed roles a couple of times. Been at DevRel for the last also 3 years or so. But my background is I have a very weird background. My background is technically in infrastructure. I worked in data centers before. I am someone that you could basically say I went all the way up from physical servers, to like virtual ones. And I studied software engineering as a degree, but I never really worked as a software engineer. Like, software engineer have always been part of what I do in sense of automation, scripting, things like that. And yeah, DevRel for Google Cloud, mainly Kubernetes and containers for the last 3.5 years.
Perfect, thank you. So yeah, we had also similar path. I think more similar with the Beka one. So I was software engineer, and then I turned into all this DevRel thing. So I would be very happy to share, of course, your experience, in turning our careers into developer relations. And when we do an event about developer relations, usually we have the classic question, which is, what is DevRel? Now, I think this has been asked so many times, so I want to twist this just a little bit, and instead of answering what is DevRel, I would like to add, what is DevRel for you? What does the developer relations means for you from your real personal experience of what you have maybe tried at your companies and in this journey? I'm very curious to know your point of view, what you really felt about developer relations. Who would like to start?
Go. You can go ahead, Beka. Go for it.
Go.
For me, I really think that it's important to be thinking from your user's perspective and understanding what are their pain points, what is their feedback, how can I best support them? And I know fairly recently, I was in a bunch of interviews where they were asking me okay, well, what motivates you? What excites you? And that was kind of my answer. How do I empower people to do more, right? When I can see other people succeed, then I'm motivated by that. And so for me, finding ways to help people succeed with the product or to be able to utilize it in a way that makes their life easier, that's a win for me.
Thank you so much. And Abdel, what do you think is like? I ask you like, what does DevRel means for you? Because you've been doing this for a while. You also switched career from infrastructure, and so I would like to know your personal experience.
Yeah, so I mean, it's interesting. Like the developer relations means different things in different companies, and from my experience so far, it seems that most companies consider it as a sort of like technical marketing role, where you're usually sitting within like the marketing organization, um, or sometimes it's part of product engineering, right? For me, it's basically like you have the technical knowledge and the ability to communicate about that. That's basically what DevRel is to me. That I know things and I know how to talk about them. Um, um, and when I say talk about them, I'm putting this between quotes because talking about something can be in the form of like a talk in a conference, or it could be like a tutorial or a video or a podcast or whatever, right? Whatever form you create your content in, it could be social media, it could be whatever. Because that aspect of communicating is not given to everyone. Not everyone can do that. Not everyone has the ability to go on stage and talk, or to write a blog, or to write anything like that. Like, I mean, curiously, most developers are really, really bad at writing documentation. So expecting developers to actually write blogs is not going to happen, right? So from my experience, it have been this kind of one way, well, two ways communication, which is about the product that your company is trying to promote, and you can talk about that, but you're also open to hear what people have to say and somehow bring that feedback back to the product, right? And so that happens in the form of either you're hanging out in a conference and you talk to people, or sometimes Stack Overflow. I spend a lot of time Stack Overflow, Reddit, hearing about where Reddit seems to be the platform where most people complain because it gives this level of anonymity, I guess. But it's actually a great format for us, at least for me, to like be able to pull information about like, you know, where is our product lacking feature, or is documentation not very clear and people are kind of confused and things like that. So sorry, it's a very long answer.
No, it was perfect. I will give also my quick point of view. For me, like say, I come from the sports world, so like working a lot like with people, like even like physical touch with people. So when I switched to tech and software engineering, it felt a bit weird, like sitting in an office. For me, I always worked in a gym. So when I came back to the real, I felt again like alive, that I can work with people. So this doesn't mean that this probably is a very good role for me. I didn't know that this existed. I think before 2019, I didn't even ever heard about DevRel. And so this is what DevRel means for me, like, coming back to working directly with people. So even if I like technical stuff, I've been working on the technical stuff, for me, it really does mean to work with people. There is the classic question, like, can everyone be a DevRel? And for example, my personal opinion is that yes, if you like to work with people. Some people, they don't like that. And I'm not talking about extrovert or introvert. I like to work with people, even if I am naturally an introvert. And so this is what means for me. And so yes, thank you so much for your answers. And I think we should twist more this question to this, rather a classic definition that, of course, my definition of developer advocate, like it changes over time. It evolves depending on how many podcasts and how many things happen to me. So thanks. Thank you. Hi, Sophia. How are you? How's it going? Sophia also very interesting to developer relations. If you want, you can drop a question. So we'll pick some questions. So don't be shy and just write some of them. So again, usually we do this event also with Nimrod. So today I have to be, the good guy and the bad guy at the same time. Not that guy, but let's say I would like to ask you like a favor, like, and try to share maybe a difficult moment in your DevRel career, because I think it is a career that can have some downsides, and even there are many pros. But is there anything that you remember that maybe, if you can share it, otherwise you can talk just about a very busy moment, and I'm sure that you will find it anyway. So do you have like a moment, I don't know, that was maybe difficult, like working as a DevRel, or maybe from specific reasons? Do you have it? I would like to start. let's call out
I think
Abdel.
I can answer this question. Yeah.
Okay.
I don't have any particular moments that I remember, but I think generally speaking, since you mentioned it, like part of being in DevRel is working with people, right? And so people come in all sorts, I guess. And sometimes it can be very difficult to actually work with people in the sense that you can, whether it's like online interaction or like in-person interaction, people can be like hostile in the way they're like talking to you or the way they're asking questions and I guess we probably all had this experience which is like you go do a talk somewhere and then you finish and then you are open to questions and then somebody basically like grabs all the attention and starts asking very very hard questions, right? Like and start kind of cramming you or like trying to roast you on stage in the sense that like, oh, what you said doesn't make any sense, blah blah, right? So knowing how to manage this and it's like I think what makes this particularly difficult, this particular problem of interaction with people, what makes it particularly problematic is the fact that we all have ego, and your default response when somebody tries to ask you hard questions is to go on the defensive, and it's very easy to fall into the trap of talking about things you don't know. Like the easiest thing is to always say I don't know or I can follow up with you later, right? Instead of like trying to like answer the question right away. So I think that this is probably one of the hardest thing that you need to manage. And then of course there is the work-life balance. We were just talking about it, like a lot of travel, a lot of like you're everywhere. So
that's normal. That's not a difficult part.
That's the easy part.
Yeah, thank you. I have also a comment on this, but I would like to know from Beka first. And so, is there like anything that came up in your mind?
I mean, I totally agree with what he just said. Those were so spot on. So I'll just add maybe a different dimension, and that's business alignment. And I think that one of my first jobs, we had like a pretty new DevRel team, and we were all really excited. We did our team on site. We came out with goals and spent 3 days like really planning what we were going to do probably for the next 6 months or so, right? And we felt really positive and energized after that. And then we returned home and found out that the company wanted us to totally pivot on what we were doing, including the technology that we were using for all of our examples. And then that just became really, I think, I don't know, overwhelming. We kind of like lost morale and, getting kind of like feedback from folks within the company that wasn't productive. So things like, we don't like what you did or something like that. Like, okay, what didn't you like about it? I don't know, but I didn't, right? Like that's kind of a generalized comment, but when you don't know, then it makes it really hard to be successful and figure out like, okay, what are those metrics that we're trying to hit? How do we get there? Because you feel like now you're just kind of like sprinting to catch up to this goal that you don't know what it is, or it keeps moving. So you're just kind of exhausted running around trying to figure out like, what do they want? Because they don't know where that finish line is either. And so, seeing that alignment change can be a real challenge, especially when it impacts your whole team.
Yes, this is absolutely true, and sometimes it's hard because people sometimes they don't even know what they want. For me, I had difficult periods. One of them, but probably sometimes you basically act as a sort of like face of the company. So it's like basically like some people even think that you are the CEO of the company, so they might give you a very like a feedback like directly to you, or something that maybe you are not directly involved, but it's like this is basically what happens, So and that's what happened for me. And also about like the difficult questions, my very first talk ever in 2022, it started with a super technical questions about a very small like thing that probably just the person who made the questions that they knew. So it was a sort of like bragging, like about a specific nitpicking thing, and probably I would answer in a different way. And back then, let's say I struggled a bit, so I said, okay, are all the questions like this? Instead, only that has been the only like hard questions that I ever received in my whole speaker career. So I was just unlucky, probably. So that's it. And I love the approach of Abdel, like saying, I don't know, which is it seems like the more natural thing to say. But maybe, when we are on the stage, we feel like that maybe, we want to try to do our best to answer that person, but we are not like, this is not like an interview or an exam. This is just like having like an open conversation. Sometimes I also share that maybe you can even turn this into something very good that happened to me a couple of times. If you say, I don't know, and we can connect later, usually that person can feel like honored that like you reach out, you take time to reach out to the team, and then you reach out directly on LinkedIn. I got some friendships like this because okay, this person really cares about the answer. So never say something that you don't know, especially in tech where things can be so random and hard and different. So yes, this was my experience. Thank you for sharing, of course, also like something that didn't go as expected. I would like now to also make another question. We got a question from Sofia, but I want to alternate a bit. So there are many people who are interested into this role, maybe even here or like on social media, because and I think that this starts from the fact that maybe some people, they don't want, for example, just to code, and maybe they want to maybe to communicate this to someone else. So I don't know how this starts, but this is also what started to me. I felt this very natural, like say when I started creating content, then I got into DevRel. So in your experience, what would be like the right things to do if, let's say you already had your first DevRel role, so you had your first dev role, so software engineer. So let's say that you have some experience in tech. How can you go into this direction in this career? Because maybe it's not that easy. Maybe it's harder than other things. Because if you say, okay, I want to become a senior developer in Python, I would say, let's just stick to it, and then you will evolve. But let's say that I had one role as a web developer, and now I've ended up, I don't know, doing a couple of things. Now I know what developer relations is. What do you think is the best way to get into DevRel in this avocado world?
I think for me, I didn't ever intend to be in DevRel. I kind of was like forced into it. Like, hey, you should do this. And like, I don't know about that, right? And it just became, it was a natural pivot for me because I was talking in public about the things that I was doing, right? Like I built a community because I wanted to, and I felt like it was needed. I blogged my way through boot camp because somebody said, hey, you're a writer, maybe you should try this out, and then somebody said, hey, I'll give you my TensorFlow JS book if you want to live stream going through it and learning TensorFlow JS. And so just kind of naturally progressed. But I think like there's lots of different ways to be in DevRel. And if you find the thing that works best for you, then you might experiment with that thing. So write those blog posts about it or create those videos. Go to the conferences and give talks. You don't have to do all of those things, but maybe find the thing that you enjoy most and kind of do that out loud, right? Do it in public so other people can see you, and then it becomes more natural. And you also have something to show off on your resume, like, oh, hey, I did 10 live streams about this particular technology that you are hiring for. And then it doesn't become so much of a pivot as it is just kind of like a natural flow of where you are in your career.
Thank you so much. We also have a follow-up by Sofia, so she's interested, but I would like to know the point of view from Abdel first. I would like to give a very quick one too, and then we can move on a couple of questions about this, so stay tuned. So Abdel, what do you think is the best way?
I mean, I think Beka covered pretty much everything I was thinking, like in terms of the content creation. What I wanted actually to say is what Beka said is the core of what DevRel do. And I think I'm just anticipating questions. I guess at some point somebody will ask, what do you actually do? What do you spend your day doing, right? And it's for me, it's as simple as like, as a DevRel, you're bridging the gap between products and documentation and people. Because when your company engineers release a version of a product, they release documentation. But documentation is not always useful for developers, because a lot of developers, they don't start from, or most developers don't start from documentation first. They might start from an example. They want to see, give me an example of how I built a full app in Rust, whatever, right? So somebody has to write that. And that person could either be a fan of the Rust language that likes blogging, but DevRel is not their main job. Arguably, they are doing DevRel job, but that's just not, they're not paid to do it. But like you as a DevRel, you're bridging that gap. You come in the middle and you say, okay, I think that this will be useful piece of content to produce, whatever format you produce this content in. So this is something that you have to like to do, right? Like you have to, as Beka said, try blogging, try doing videos or live streams or whatever. But the other thing I wanted to cover very quickly is doing talks. So I know that going on stage can be very intimidating for a lot of people. And you don't necessarily have to start with big events. You don't have to go to like 1,000+ people stage. You can start with meetups. Meetups is a really good way actually to get used to speaking in front of people. There are a lot of communities doing a lot of meetups all over the place. And usually they are like very small, very intimate. People usually from your city. So that's also a great way of like kind of dipping your toes into the public speaking world, and before jumping in front of big audience. Yeah, I think that's all I have.
So are you telling me, Abdel, that to run a marathon, we have to run 1 kilometer first?
Yes, of course. I mean,
I
if
know
you
that
try
you
to
love
run a
it,
marathon, if you try to run a marathon that you've never run in your life, you're probably gonna injure yourself.
Yeah, and also I like this that we can keep this analogy. If you never experience a stage, or if you might actually be scared and never do this again.
Yeah.
If you have a very bad experience in hiking the first time you go, you will never go again, because it has, you connect your memory with something that was too much for you. So
I can give you a little bit of a behind the scene really quick. I am a chair of a conference in Morocco that we do every year called DevOps Morocco. And one of the things we do at this conference, when we are selecting the speakers, right, like people submit their talks, then we have a committee that reviews the talks and votes. And then as a chair, I can select the talks, right? Usually what we do is if the person is a first-time speaker or relatively junior in their career, we would only give them like short sessions. I'm never gonna give a first-time speaker a 50-minute slot, because I think 50 minutes is way too much for somebody who have never done public speaking before, right? So I would give them like a 15 minutes or a 20-minute slot, which is quite a lot if you've never done actually public speaking. So this is also a good way for you to, like, if you see a conference, try to see if they have shorter formats, because then you don't have to produce a lot of content, and you're only going to be scared for 20 minutes instead of 50 minutes, which is already a good thing, right?
Yes. So in my case, it happened exactly this. So my first talk was in front of like 100 people, which was not, and we had a 50 minutes. But it went well. But
yeah, I mean, the more you do it, the more obviously 50 minutes feels too short, and then you just want to talk more, right?
Yeah, and to be precise, like doing a 15-minute talk might actually be hard, but we're talking about, the anxiety of staying on stage. But actually, from a technical point of view, I did one, and it was very hard from a technical perspective, because you need to compress the thing. I would like to mention that, Beka, I shared the link. Yes, what is that link about? Job hunt? To prepare for job hunt?
So Sophia asked a question about, let's see, how can one prepare for a DevRel interview? What are some things one needs to keep in mind to know before their first interview? Or how can they increase their chances for the next stage? And so that research source from Virtual Coffee was based on a talk I did for the community about how I used AI to navigate the job hunt. So it's not specifically DevRel related, but as most of us know, the job hunt can be really, really exhausting. And there's a lot of prep that's required. And so this was kind of my approach, as well as the approach of other people who I chatted with, and how we were able to use it to be a little bit more effective and impactful, and to land that job offer. And so I think like it helps to take some of that pressure off of you, if you know how to use it right. And there was, I had gone through, one of my kids got in an accident right before I was doing this interview, a pretty major accident. And so I didn't have time to prep. So here I was like 10 minutes before I think it was my third interview. And I knew that they would want me to talk about the product because I looked at who was on the calendar invite and I Googled, okay, who is this person in the organization? Like, okay, this is their role. These are the things that they're doing. So I want to be able to talk about the competitors, their product, how I would differentiate that, like what the messaging would be for me and how I would convey that to the user. And so I put all of that information into is either Claude or ChatGPT and said, hey, I have 10 minutes to prep for this interview. Please help me with this thing. And I'm not lying when I will say that they asked me specifically 2 of the questions that I put in there and I had answers for it. I was like, oh, I got this. And I think they're like, wow, she like really thought this through. Must have prepared, like I did prepare, but I think like, work smarter, not harder kind of approach to that. And so I would say, know the product and understand that if it's a product team that you're interested in joining, because if you can talk about that, if you can understand who their competitors are and how you differentiate, that shows that you've done homework. And I think that definitely can move you on to the next level.
Perfect. I love that. So basically, you used your short-term memory. How it happened in school. Like we had like 5 minutes before the exam, and then of course, so sometimes we get lucky. Like sometimes it happens, but it's more about using our time wisely. I think it also can help, like to check things just right before the interview, going into the flow, grab a couple of concepts. So this might actually be very, very good for you. And by the way, you said that your keynote was 1 hour and a half. So maybe you should tell them that's not a keynote, that's a movie. Do you want me to put a CGI on it, or bring some people who can act with me on stage?
I saw the comments and I saw the comments. I was wondering, like, why would they give you a keynote for 1 hour and a half?
So it was interesting. That freaked me out, first of all. But then when I started to think about it as like 3 30-minute talks that were connected, it became much more doable. So I was just like, okay, let's build out the first chunk, then build a bridge from chunk 1 to chunk 2, and then the same thing for the third one. And I will say, it was 3 days, and so a speaker per day. And I actually loved the talk. So they ended up being like between an hour and I think an hour and 20 minutes. There was like some introduction and chatting that went on as well. But it allowed you to go like a little bit deeper into things, but also really personal. And so mine was about storytelling in tech and how important it is and the neurobiology of that. And so I think like I've given that talk as a 1 hour talk and I think a 15-minute talk as well. And I really kind of prefer that 1.5 hour talk because you can go a little bit deeper into things that you wouldn't be able to otherwise. So it was like definitely daunting, but it was also expected from this conference that had been going on for, years and years.
Yeah, one of my favorites formats is exactly what you're talking about. This conference that I talked about called DevOps is actually like a franchise. So there's like a bunch of them. It's not only Morocco. There is like 6 of them basically total, 5 in Europe and 1 in Morocco. And this particular conference has a very particular format called Deep Dive, which is 3 hours. And so a deep dive for 3 hours is not a workshop. The audience is not on their laptop. They're listening to you. And so I did this a couple of times, and it's one of my favorites because you get to go really, really deep. It is a lot of work to prepare for it because you have to prepare as much content for 3 hours. And you have to be also strategic with how do you keep people attention, not to focus too much on slides, maybe alternate slides and demos or something like that, just to kind of keep people engaged. But it is definitely one of my favorite formats.
Great, thank you. And yes, I think that to keep the problem here, of course, because we could speak for hours. I think we can easily speak for 2-3 hours here today, but we can like to keep it short. The problem is more, what Abdel said. So keeping people engaged. Sophia is asking if like people like was replying like good. Oh, we also have the recording of it, of the talk. That's amazing. I'm gonna post it right now. Now, since you asked, now you should go on this link and you should also leave a comment after checking it. Okay, this is what I expect from you. And yes, thank you. And I always love when we share our our personal experiences, what happened, and also because, for example, I didn't know this thing about your keynote, Beka. So it's great. I think DevRel is really like about sharing our experience, because it basically can be absolute different jobs. And to be completely honest, we are here answering your questions because they are about public speaking, because really people really struggle with that. I can feel it also in my DMs and in my posts. But DevRel doesn't have to be just a public speaker. I know DevRels who just do this, and they probably don't go to conferences because maybe the company doesn't need it, or maybe they work on a different team. So it's not just about that. It might be about public speaking. I like the idea that if you're a DevRel, you might be ready. It's like, working in a team. I think that you should be ready to also be prepared, going on different formats. Otherwise, it might limit you. So one thing is, like, I don't go to conferences for this company because they don't need it, but I might actually be able to do it. And I might actually be able to communicate, because our job is to communicate. So in some ways, probably the one in person is probably the funniest one. You can also have some free food, which is great. So yes, that's it. Yes. And I would like also to know your experience, for example, in public speaking. How has been your first talk, like in the chat, and so on. And Abdel, before, like some minutes ago, you mentioned about the role of the DevRel itself, and it happens to me quite often, to be honest, that some people, especially the people who are not into DevRel, they don't get it, and they say DevRels are just developers who like to travel, or they stay on Twitter all day long, or even worse, since we are here on With Spicy Takes, maybe they are not good at coding, so they need to pivot to DevRel because they are not good enough. So I would like to know your take about this, because this is also sometimes, usually I don't fight much, but like this is something that I think we need to address. So I would like you to discuss about this.
I mean, who needs to be good at coding? AI is going to replace all of us anyway. So, jokes aside, I think it's at the core of people not understanding what DevRel is or what people do when you are in DevRel. Obviously, I would piggyback on something you said earlier. You don't have to do conferences if you're in DevRel, right? There is, in my organization, as Google Cloud, we have people in my team that doesn't go to conferences. They produce content, they do videos, they do code samples, they do a lot of things, but they don't travel, or maybe travel once a year to like one large conference. So going to conferences is like very probably a small part of the DevRel community in general, right? Who are able to do it because people have family commitments and things like that, and then B, they like to do it, right? So to your question, like basically my rule of thumb, generally speaking, is I don't talk about things I don't understand, right? And in order for me to talk about something or to produce content about something, I have to spend some time working and using that particular thing, right? I'm not going to talk about Rust because I'm not a Rust expert, right? I'm not going to talk about anything that I'd like. You have to have a very good understanding of the technology that you're going to be advocating on, right? So I have this like really maybe stupid way of thinking about it, which is I personally must be able to answer at least 80% of the questions. Because if that's kind of like a threshold for me, which basically roughly means that if I am at that level where I can understand most of the question or answer most of the questions, then I mean I have a fundamental understanding of the technology itself. There might be like corner cases, there might be use cases you never seen, you've never encountered. And personally, because I work on Kubernetes is a huge project. There is a lot of use cases, there is a lot of ways of using it. So there is always questions about things that I've never seen before. I've never had the opportunity to experience, right? So that's basically to the point. Like developer relations, people are developers first because you need to be a developer. You need to understand what you're talking about, and then they just know how to communicate probably better than most people. So that would be my answer. And if people think that we just like to travel and be at airports, so be it. It's fine. I'm happy with that. with that.
I mean, who
arrangement.
doesn't?
Who doesn't exactly? I think that a lot of time, I think that the problem is a problem of perception. I think that people see the tip of the iceberg. They just see you on social media, like traveling, posting from different parts of the world, going here, going there, posting your pictures on stage, but they don't see all the work that happens behind. Like to do a 45 minutes or a 50-minute session, you're probably going to spend like, I don't know, 20, 30, 40 hours in just research and development, right? Like just doing research, understanding the topic, understanding the technology, etc. Maybe more. It depends really on how complex that particular topic is, right? So we probably, I don't know, I would consider myself a very mediocre developer in general. This is generally speaking, like my level. I'm not great, but I am okay. I can write okay code. And I think that it's not really about being a good or a bad developer. This is my kind of hot take, generally speaking. I think that people are sometimes, like people in the developer community sometimes are a little bit too focused on like one particular technology or one particular framework or one particular thing. I think that generally speaking, we should be technologists. And when I say technologists, it means that you're able to understand technology. It doesn't matter what the technology is, right? Like it could be Kubernetes, it could be JavaScript. You're able to understand how it works. And this goes to the core of whether you have very good understanding of fundamentals of computer science or you don't, right? And if you don't, then, you know, the classic example, and I'm gonna shut up here, the classic example is DNS problems. Like, you know, the joke, it's always DNS. I have met hundreds and hundreds of times developers who just, you know, they have issue, they have a bug, they have an error somewhere. And then you go dig into it and they realize, oh, it's a DNS problem. You're not able to resolve whatever host that you're trying to talk to. And then they don't get it. Like, because for me, like that's computer science 101, right? Like you should have this basic understanding. So yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing this, Abdel, and I'm sure you are a great developer. But you know, sometimes our perception is a bit biased. So of course, if you know many things, you know nothing. For example, to understand that there are many things of Kubernetes you don't know, you need to know some stuff. Of course, otherwise you've not even an idea of how many commands or things or configurations that might happen. So this is something that happens. The only time when you think you know everything is that when you're just getting started. In that case, you think you know everything because your knowledge is so small that it makes you probably feel like very knowledgeable about a topic. But then, of course, yes, I can also have no problems with that. But and I think that we should really. What I really don't like when I see these takes, I mean, if they address me, it's fine. But for example, if I see, addressing maybe a new DevRel or a younger DevRel, then probably I might intervene. And I think that we should always value each other people's time. Otherwise, we might say, if you're a developer, you just code on AI and then your job is done. I don't like when you they undervalue people's work, because sometimes we work a lot behind the scenes and people don't see it, and it's fine. Like it is for a video or for something else. So I think we are here also to say that if you really enjoy something, you should keep doing it. And of course, there are different skills that will have the same name, that will not have had to differentiate. It's just that it's focused on something else. What about you, Beka? You've been to many conferences, and like, so what about you? Like, what do you think can be addressed to this thing that I saw this happening? Like, I mean, not often, but let's say once in a while, I see that little like comment, like a bit against the DevRel people.
Yeah, I think it's important to remember that DevRel means so many different things to so many different companies, right? And so I've definitely known non-technical DevRel folks, and a lot of what they do is they focus on the community, and they kind of act as that like community representative. They focus on feedback, creating a space where they can take that feedback to developers and kind of encouraging the growth of that. How do they nurture that community? And they might be doing like their like community all-stars program or whatever you call it, right? And so that is a version of DevRel. And maybe this is spicy, but I think like people who are excellent developers and excellent at developer relations are unicorns. There are not that many of them. And I think that goes back to the burnout question too, because sure, there are probably people that could do both, but you have to keep up with it. Technology grows and changes. And so if you want to be a top-notch developer, you also have to keep up with all of those changes and continually build with that, because that's probably the best way to learn it and to understand it deeply. And so I definitely know some people that are able to do both of those things, but it makes it really hard and complicated. And I years ago, I was my husband was having a brain scan done, and I was talking to this woman that was running this study, and she was just so impressive. She was very young, like early 20s, but she was doing a neurobiology degree. I think she had a master's in music, and I think maybe she was getting like a master's in computer science. She's doing all of these things. And so I was talking to her about it, and she said, you know what, it's not that hard because everything in life is pattern matching. You just have to find the pattern, right? And I thought, like, oh, that's a really interesting way to think about it. But I also think that that's kind of DevRel too, especially if you're a DevRel content person, right? Maybe you're doing guides. You find the pattern that is the most effective way to produce a guide, and then it allows you just to kind of go and run with that thing. So it becomes, it might be challenging at first to figure out, like, okay, what is that? What do the users want? What is most useful here? But once you're kind of able to match that pattern, it makes it a little bit easier, and it gives you some more space to do those things. And so then you can maybe master that technology. But I think that if you recognize that, and this is maybe the caveat for someone that's new and hasn't worked in a large code base before or something, understanding how to debug something might be really difficult to do. When I was in boot camp, we didn't really learn that much about debugging because we were working like with 5-file projects, right? You don't usually need to debug in an environment that small, but when you're working with a code base that has tons of files, then you really learn about debugging because all these parts are working together, and you have to figure out, like, okay, what is the part that's really broken here, right? And so then that my advice to folks would be to like spend some time like learning about those things so you can be able to apply that going forward as you build your DevRel career.
Thank you so much for sharing these. And I think it's fine if someone is better than us doing something, and even help us, to inspire us. For example, I've just been at a RustConf, and for sure people were proficient than me. Like there were people like who actually wrote the Rust language. Of course, they know that better than me, of course, and that's okay. But I think that we can see this in different ways. You can either have imposter syndrome if you're not good enough, or we can get like this in the positive ways. I say, okay, these people around me, they are very proficient in Node.js. I'm at a Node.js company, a conference. I might actually get inspired. I go home and I can try building something new. I can even prepare a talk. And I think DevRel is also, it's a double-edged role when you might actually, be like a bit like you can be burned out if something feels really overwhelmed, but you also have many different opportunities. You can try. If you, I want to get more, I'm an expert in Python, I might actually even do, a Python talk or something maybe about a Python feature that the company used. I might also take some challenges. So I love this about DevRel, that it's always challenging. If you like to role which is challenging, and I think that since I started doing DevRel, I never met DevRel was like a bit like bored, or like not. They don't like. It's always usually this is the opposite. That they are very passionate of what they do, and this is why I would like really to ask now you, what is the best experience or like the best memory that you had in your DevRel career? Something that happened that really made you say happy and say, okay, I'm happy that I'm into developer relation. Let's talk about something good now. And if you want in the chat, you can also share your experience, even if it's a small role. But I would like to know your experience, or even just experience in just in the developer relations world, even if you didn't have a role, maybe in something that you created, or maybe you got a good feedback. So, do you have it? Who has it? Who wants to start?
Yeah, I do have one, which is quite recent. This is quite funny because it didn't happen at a conference. It didn't happen at an event. It just happened randomly over lunch. I met someone in an event, and we kept in touch. This person works in a small startup in Stockholm, in Sweden, and we kept like texting on LinkedIn. And at some point, I said I invited the person for lunch. So the person came to the office. We had lunch, and then we were talking. And then the person brought up this particular problem they're running into with our products, with like GKE basically, but like our product, right? So they're running into an issue. They were following documentation. I wasn't really sure. Like I couldn't figure out what was the problem. So I said, okay, whatever. Let's just go grab coffee. We'll pull the laptop and then we'll try to reproduce this problem. And so turns out it was actually a bug in our product and also a gap in documentation, obviously. And so I created like a high priority bug internally toward our like an issue tracker internally, which then by the time, because most of our software development as Google is done in the West Coast, by the time I was finished with my day of work, the software engineers woke up, picked that up, and then they realized it was a bug. They confirmed it was a bug, and then they fixed it. And 3 days later, when they rolled out a change, which then fixed the issue that initially started, right? And that's probably for me is like a full circle of some of the best work you can do as a developer advocate, right? Which is you listen to feedback, you either help provide a fix, or you take that to the engineering team and say, this is broken, it needs to be fixed, right? And being able to see that coming live in the sense that the person later pings you and say like, okay, the problem seems to be fixed. I'm able to, do my thing and auto scale, whatever. There's an auto scaling issue. That's probably is one of the best work you can do. And then I guess the other one, which is just for the sake of jokes, being reposted by your boss. That would be awesome on Twitter.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Abdel. Beka, do you have a good memory or your best experience?
I mean, giving the keynote was definitely up there for me. It was such a special experience to be able to share with folks. And James Q-Quick is a friend of mine. I mentioned earlier, he was there when I cried during one of my talks, and like it got me through it. So like I'm gonna run out of this room and I'm never gonna speak at a conference ever again. Like I'm just gonna hide my face in the sand. But like I looked out into the crowd, and like he gave me like an affirmation, like a head nod or something. I was like, okay, I can do this. Like, and so I made it through that talk. But then he gave the keynote the day before mine, and it was wild how much they worked together. It was almost like they built off of each other, but we hadn't really talked about what we were doing. And it was just like such a special memory to be able to have that experience with one of your friends, and then to talk to people about how impactful it is. So that's definitely like the highlight of my career. And I'll just say one recently too. We have a tool at Continue called CN. It's our CLI tool for AI automation. And so I was working on this guide for it. And so I wanted to like kind of hand code everything out first to see how it worked. And so I was like, I needed information from PostHog, so I had to set up PostHog so I could test it. And then I had to feed it to CN to interpret that data, and then use a GitHub API to create an issue from all of that. And so that took me much longer than I thought it was going to take me. But part of it is like we're rolling out these new features. The documentation needs updated. And so it was like a good experience to be able to say like, okay, need to update this documentation, kind of like what you were saying as well. Like here's a gap here. And so here's how I need to be able to do it. And then I was able to reverse engineer it yesterday. So I would just, our CLI is called CN. And I was like, hey, CN, I need this information from PostHog, and I want you to create a GitHub issue with it. And then it did it in like 30 seconds. So it was like kind of a funny experience because it took me like 4 days to figure this thing out. But understanding like, okay, what's going on? How do I debug this? But also like, wow, this is just made so much simpler for anybody that wants to put this workflow in. And that was like a pretty big one for me.
Thank you so much for sharing this. I just realized that I think James Quick has never been on this series, but I absolutely want him here. I think James Quick has also been the first person that actually talked about developer relations. I think it was the end of 2020. I was doing interviews on my YouTube channel, and at some point I got James, so we never met before, and he actually got into this developer advocate role. But back then I heard it just a couple of times. And then I think 6-7 months later, I got my first DevRel role. So it's interesting that like the first time, I don't know, I had that at some point in your life, maybe you have a talk with someone about developer relations for the first time from a person who has experience in this. And this was me, because before that I was not active on socials. I didn't know about all these things. I think it was called like yes, like evangelism, something like that. It was a bit different. Even the term was a bit different, and they switched more to advocate, and that's it. So yes, thank you so much, Beka, because I want now I remember that I want absolutely James here, here before the year ends. I will try. I'll meet him in person, by the way, in a week. I don't know if you are coming to commit your code, but I will. They're not. But yeah, okay.
Can I add
Perfect.
something, Francisco? Once,
Sure.
real quick. I just remember the story that's happened. This is probably one of the wildest things that's ever happened to me, which is I was working on a project with the customer. They wanted to do something with our product, which was not doable. I wrote a workaround on my blog, so on Medium. I documented a way to implement the thing that they were trying to implement, and I clearly put like a big banner that says, this is a workaround. This is not production ready at all. Don't do this, right? A year comes by and I get a random ping from a product manager inside of Google who tells me, did you write this blog? I said, yes. And then he basically sent me a link to our internal ticketing system. So that's the thing that people open a ticket when they have an issue, right? And in that link, there was the link to my article, and my article was mentioned in 45 different tickets. So people go implement my workaround, and then they break their clusters, and then they open a support case, and then in the support case, they just put a link to my article, and they say, like, we followed this. This is a Google engineer who documented this. And so what happened turns out that even the products, people realized it was a huge issue, and they actually implemented the feature for it. And so, and the product manager insisted on following up with me so I can update my article later to remove the workaround and just point to the documentation to say, this is how you implement it properly, right? And I think this was probably one of these, like, you know, because like one of the things that we talked about earlier, we said, like, as a developer advocate or a developer, you should be like, one of the things you could do is try to influence the product by taking feedback from users and bringing it back to the product. That's hard because product engineering have different priorities compared to you. What you might think is important is not probably very important for the developers, for the product team. But if you're able to force hand people into implementing a feature this way, then that's probably one of the best things that have ever happened to me.
And then we say that developer advocates, they don't have an impact, like in this case.
There you go.
And it was also, I don't think it was not even like intentionally, otherwise probably it would not have worked that well. Because which basically tried to solve a developer's problem. And then, of course, it came up. You know, it had a couple of iterations to get fixed. But I love this approach. Like, and this was but the blog was just spontaneous from you, or it was like from
it was my own blog on Medium, so it's just spontaneous. And up to now, that particular blog is the most viewed blog in my entire Medium accounts. You know, when you go to like, if you publish on Medium, you go down to the bottom. There is like, if you click on the article in the stats page, in the bottom there is like a section that says which links refer to your blog. And it tells, okay, LinkedIn, so it means basically that your blog was shared on LinkedIn. And that blog right now still has actually links to internal Confluence pages of people. So I see like domains which are something.mcdonalds.com, just giving a random name here, right? So there's basically the link to the Confluence of an internal Confluence, right? There's just somebody shared my link into that, and then Medium picks that up because they see traffic coming from, you know, a particular domain.
Okay, it was relevant.
Which is wild, yeah. Which is like, so
interesting. But I really love this way that, you know, we try to solve some people's problem, and, you know, developers, when they find a solution, they're really happy to share this, how this can be fixed and things. So really happy about this. Thank you, Abdel. Thank you so much, Abdel. Thank you so much, Beka. Before we wrap up, we're already close to 1 hour, which is mind-blowing in my case. I would like maybe both of you to share maybe what you're currently working on. If there is something specific, maybe about your current DevRel role, which are like your responsibilities, what you're basically currently like working on, like now in the day-to-day, like in this period, so I also can know more, and maybe I can find, you know, some ideas for some new collaborations, some new things that might happen. So maybe we can start with Beka, like yes, so please.
So right now I'm pretty focused on continuous AI. So integrating AI kind of into your workflow and the architecture to help to automate some of those things to free up your time to do tasks that you find that need all of your attention, right? And so like that post hog to GitHub issues thing. It's automating some of that process. And so I'm working through kind of creating different options and cookbooks so folks can free up some of their time to do those other things that they find to be more necessary or impactful in their work.
Thank you so much. Yes, Abdel, what are you currently working on?
I mean, obviously the answer is AI, right? Because that's what everybody's doing these days.
Of course.
But very particularly, I'm working on essentially all the ways you could run LLMs on Kubernetes and all the optimizations that have been done in Kubernetes, particularly for supporting running large language models. I think what the industry is moving toward a direction where not everybody wants to use cloud-hosted LLMs like Gemini, ChatGPT, Cloud, etc. So people want to do open LLMs, or they want to fine-tune their own LLMs or whatever. So I'm working on that, and that's like it might sound simple, but it's a huge Pandora box of issues because Kubernetes was not designed to run large language models in the first place, and we're trying to kind of optimize it to do that, right? So it comes with a lot of issues around scalability, around pushing the limits of what the system can do, etc., etc. So this is my main focus these days. There is a project called LLMD. It's LLMD.io, which was created as a collaboration between Google, Red Hat, and ByteDance, which is also focused on this particular problem. So how do you run large language models on Kubernetes? Therefore, most of my talks actually that I did this year or I'm going to do for the rest of the year are focused on this particular topic.
Thank you, Abdel. And yes, I love this point of view. And yes, some people they like to run LLMs in that way. I found LLMD.
Yeah, it's LLMD.io. I'll send you the website.
Send me
I
the
think
link,
LLM,
please.
yeah, I'll do it.
Mm-hmm. Yes, and also I will search also for your link, Beka, for your company, and yes, and so in the meanwhile, maybe I would like maybe you to give some final thoughts because I think that first of all, it's been a great conversation. I think both of you did, of course, great. But I was sure 100% about it. What about like something? How we can like wrap up about this event to with maybe maybe that might be useful, especially for people who are curious about developer relations because there are so many resources, many different places. So, what do you think is like the best tip, the best thing that we can share with developers and maybe I don't know wannabe developer advocates or maybe some people who are interested into development, maybe they heard about this term I don't know last month and they joined me and they might be interested into this role. What do you think we can tell them? Some final thoughts. Who would like to go?
I'll go.
Go.
I think that this is just a personal observation. I think that the tech industry is going through a shift that we are not going to see something like this anytime soon, right? This kind of shift that we're going through, this LLMs and large language models and AI is changing how the industry is working. And I think that right now, personally, I think that being in developer relations is one of the best times, or now is one of the best times to be in developer relations because you are at the edge of the technology itself, right? Like you're seeing how things are shifting and you're helping kind of shape or communicate or help people kind of figure things out, right? So not to put pressure on people, but this is probably one of the best times to try to actually get into the role. And the other thing I would say is, as Beka said earlier, like it's like DevRel means different things to different people, and you just need to kind of find your way. I think it is probably one of the best roles that you can bring your own experience into it, right? Like in my team, for example, we have one of our DevRels is a theater major. So she did theater before. And so she has that kind of background in acting and talking to a camera, which none of us really are good. I mean, none of us, I mean, I talk about myself, are good at, right? I can talk in front of a camera, but not as good as her. I can write a story, but not as good as her, right? So try to, it's actually quite interesting. I wanted to mention this earlier, Beka, because I also did some teaching in the past. It's quite interesting that a lot of people that I meet in DevRel comes from like a teaching background. So yeah, try to mold DevRel to you instead of trying to yourself to mold toward the role, I would say.
Yeah, I would say I love that the idea of transferable skills. What can you bring from a non-traditional past or other things that you've done, hobbies, and make it unique? Because we connect to people through stories, and figuring out how you're going to tell your company's story is going to make you be really effective. And so I think that, you know, there's a lack of value in that. Like, oh, we need to understand LLMs, and LLMs don't want stories. It's true, right? And I think that we are at this really pivotal time. Like, you need to know what GEO is, but you need to know what SEO is too, right? We need to optimize for LLMs. That's writing in a particular way. But then we also need to be able to connect with humans, and humans connect to each other through stories. And so you need to be able to kind of like open your mind and expand and understand. And I think that, you know, I still talk to a lot of people that are resistant to using AI. And I just think that it's important to recognize, like, it's a tool in your tool belt. You don't have to make it the only tool in your tool belt, right? But like, at the pace at which DevRel is moving for so many folks that I talk to, I think it's nearly impossible to do unless you don't sleep, if you're not using AI. And so figure out how to work that into your workflow, still be personal, understand the people around you, and to be able to tell that story.
Perfect. Thank you. So my last tip is sleep and use AI. So that's, I think we can summarize this one in this way. But I think this is like shows like a real problem, which is like the problem to stay up to date with all these things. I always say that maybe 20, 30 years ago, maybe you say, oh, there's a new technology. Fine, I will check it next year. It's fine. Now it's September. I don't have time. Now this thing might be a bit dangerous. So when we have new things, new stuff, new way, or new models, usually we check them out as soon as possible. If you're a creator, like the day before they get released, we already need to have the video ready. So that's the I think the real difference that I feel it now, because everything is evolving. It's just the pace of how things are evolving, which might be bit harder, you know, for our old body. I mean, like all the like as a human, like a biological being. So that's why it's a bit hard to keep it up. But we'll try anyway. I'd like to thank both of you for being here. I really appreciate both of you. You came here despite your difficulties, or like that could have been you here. And I would like to mention that all these events since the whole year, they've been, let's say, been possible because daily.dev sponsored them. We are here for free on their channel. I'm organizing, I'm annoying people, sending DMs, sending invitations, and all this stuff. There is a lot of organization for this. You might give daily.dev a try. We have plenty of articles. You can stay up to date. You can customize your feed. It's a platform for developers. So I really love that. And I think, especially in this AI era, we really need that. We need it now probably more than 5 years ago. I think everybody agrees that probably staying up to date today is more important than how it was maybe 5 or 10 years ago. So thanks everyone for coming. We might get some parts, and maybe we'll turn them into a short video. I left all the links below. I showed the lmda.ai link, the continue.dev link, so check them out. Thank you so much for sharing all your things in a so passionate and transparent way. Really love that. Thank you. And yeah, probably see you around, probably at some conference. I think I still need to meet you. I think Beka, or I hope so. But I think we'll fix this bug at some point, because we keep traveling and doing things. And yes, so thanks again. It was really a pleasure. Thank you. And thanks everyone for coming. Thank you everyone for coming. And yes, if you are watching this even during the go. I would like to say you. Yeah. Okay. Perfect.
Oh, she left.
Bye everyone. Bye bye.
Bye bye.
Bye bye.